I wanted to give 10 years ago on why reservation here at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Remember 2006? The government had announced extension of OBC reservation to educational institutions. There were protests, and there were protests including by doctors. I used to write, I used to think, and I used to research about these things. And I kept thinking, here are some of the most intelligent minds of this country. Sensitive beings because they deal with someone else's grief and pain all the time. And people who are used to looking at evidence. Why can't I go and convince them? Why can't I speak to them? Of course, I never got an invite. So when I got an invite for TEDx from AIIMS, and that too on the 27th of September, I'll hold the suspense of why 27th of September is important. I said I have to go and I have to speak on why reservations. But wait a minute, is it really that important a subject? Going by numbers, this is a very small question of our country. Just look at this number. Of the entire employment in the country, organized sector, all the jobs you and I talk about, care for, from chaprasi to the cabinet secretary, from CEO of a company to the guard, all of that put together is 7% of all employment in this country. Of that, government jobs account for a little more than half. So we are looking at the most 4% of employment in this country. Why bother? Is it really that big? You would assume, looking at the numbers, that it's not. But if you look at these photographs, this is the Maratha reservation rally 3 or 4 days ago. This is that tragic figure from anti-Mandal agitation of the earlier times. When it comes to reservation, we argue passionately, don't we? We protest, we agitate vehemently, we protest violently. So it's always occurred to me that there's something more to reservation than the sheer numbers. It could well be, I thought, that this is the most happening site because people like us care for jobs all the time. But it seems to me that there's something more to it that touches a raw nerve somewhere. You remember that ad, Dimag ki batti jala de? I always feel reservation is one of those questions. You talk about, you begin to address so many other questions that need to be addressed. That's why I'm here to talk to you about reservations. And that's what I would wish to invite you all for. Inviting you to think afresh about this question. All I require and ask for is an open mind, willingness to be persuaded, and evidence, ability to look at evidence with an open mind. And in order to do so, to have this decent argument, I would suggest that let's not get into some of the usual arguments that are given for and against. Those who argue for sometimes say, well, it's the majority's will in this country, all political parties are together, public opinion is with it, which is true, all this is right. But that's not a moral argument. People can be convinced for wrong reasons. Political parties in this country come together for all kinds of weird and obnoxious reasons. Sometimes it is said it is constitutional legal. Well, it's not quite constitutionally mandatory, but it's constitutionally permitted. And yes, Supreme Court has argued more than once, given judgments in its favor. But legal reasoning is not moral reasoning. Law does not define what is right or wrong. Our sense of what is right and wrong should define law. So that the Supreme Court has argued in its favor is, to my mind, not a good enough reason. Someone needs to convince me that it's good. Those who argue against it very often say, when politicians did it, I know the motive of that fellow, he wanted vote banks, he wanted this or that. As someone who's in politics now, can I tell you something? Every good thing in this world is done for very petty reasons. Motives for the greatest of things, if you go back to American Civil War and look at the motives of those who wanted slavery abolished, you would be embarrassed. So whether something is good or bad does not depend on the motive of someone who started it. Motives are usually pretty low. And in any case, the world is full of very grand motives which led to disastrous consequences. Let's not even look at it. Or to say, 50 years, the problem has not disappeared. This is like your patient coming to you, doctor, 7 days I've been having this medicine, I'm not cured. You would say, all right, but I see some change. I see certain relief. I'm into managing, I'm not into magical cures, sorry. So that's not a good reasoning. The question is, are we addressed? Is there a problem? Is it being addressed? Is there relief? Are we progressing in the right direction or not? All right, so we cannot avoid this big question. The simple question that all of us discuss all the time, is the current practice of largely caste-based reservation in this country just? For the purpose of this talk, I'll not get into the political reservations. That's easier to defend and easier to talk about. I'll speak about the question you and I talk about, namely education and jobs. Reservation there. Is it just? How do we even begin to argue about that? All of us have strong feelings, sometimes self-interest. How do you argue about something like this? I suggest we do so in 3 steps. First, we talk about principles. Then we would look at some evidence. And then we look at whether caste-based reservation offers us some solutions or not. Let's not begin straight with caste reservations and such like. Let's get the principle right. What is a good social order? But how do you argue about it? Allow me to propose a thought experiment. It's a lovely thought experiment. We'll have to do it quickly here, but someone has written a 600-page book on that. The thought experiment is very simple and intuitive. Let us redesign this country called India. Let's sit down in this room and decide how should this country be organized, how should all the benefits, rewards, punishment be distributed. In order to do so, we have every possible knowledge, sociology, economics, history, past, evidence, data, we have everything. But there's one thing we don't know, and listen to this carefully. We don't know who we are. I'm going to design this country called India. The only one thing I don't know is where I might be born. I could be born on that 28th floor of that building where there is a helipad waiting to take me to Mumbai, to various places. Or I could be born in a slum next door. I could be born in a village in Chhattisgarh. I could be a Dalit, I could be a Muslim, I could be an upper caste, I could be anything. So now you have to design a new country, a society, without knowing where you personally might be placed in it. Why this game? Because the idea is to detach that element of self-interest from moral reasoning. The idea is to say, let us argue about what is fair or good without being overly affected by the accident of birth, which all of us are so much influenced, aren't we, all the time? All right. So what would be the conclusion from this thought experiment? Try doing it. My sense is that you would say, okay, whichever way you decide, it should be a fair system, because I don't know where I might be, so I want the system to be fair. And by the way, what would be the condition of the worst off person in this system? Because I could be that person. Okay? So the argument is that finally, after this thought experiment, you would arrive at this conclusion. John Rawls, who has written this book called Theory of Justice, about which dozens and hundreds of books have been written so far. The conclusion is, those who are at the same level of talent and ability and have the same willingness to use them should have the same prospects of success regardless of their initial place in the social system. Regardless of where I am born, I should have fair chances, equal opportunities. And in this system, equal opportunity would not simply mean schools being open to you. If someone said, well, schools would be open to all girls, you would say minimally, but would there be a toilet for girls in that school? Would I be teased? Would girls be able to actually go there? And what would be the quality of education, for heaven's sake? So, when we say we want equal opportunity, we don't just want formal equality, we want substantial equality. That's the whole point of this thought experiment. The thought experiment is to simply say that if we were to have something of this kind, we would want substantive equality of opportunities. And the point is, equality does not mean similar treatment. Equality very often can mean differential treatment. And that's something I want to draw your attention to. Equal treatment does not mean same treatment. It may require, and indeed very often does require, differential treatment, as in this picture of 400-meter race. They all have to cover the same ground, and that is why they don't start from the same starting point. They are given differential starting points because they need to be given a fair and equal opportunity. I guess that's what you would want. That's the principle I wanted to establish, and this is the principle of affirmative action or preferential opportunities. Sometimes you need to give preferential opportunity in order to give equal opportunities. All right, some evidence now, very quickly. Evidence from our country. What we see, do we see a country with equal opportunities? Probably we don't. We see hoarding of opportunities in a few hands based on location. Urban people hoard opportunities based on class in favor of the rich, gender in favor of men, boys, and community in the case of upper caste Hindus. The first three I probably don't need to prove. We see it all the time. If I take a poll, all of you would agree, yes, urban-rural matters, rich-poor matters, gender matters. But about caste, we are not quite convinced. Look at this evidence. This gives you a share of Indian population. What are the major communities? I just want you to focus on this red thing that we don't talk about. We say SC, ST, OBC, general. What is this general? There is something called Hindu upper caste, which we don't talk about, which remains unnamed. So that's why we put it on red. By broad estimates, official estimates, it should be around 26%. Sociologists think it is closer to 20%. What sort of share do they occupy in august institutions of the kind that I stand today? Here is a survey of Government of India. Look at the share of the red, 67%. This is all central universities and all institutions of higher learning put together, national importance, institutions like this one. What about teachers in those institutions? The same survey, Government of India figure, 66%. So about 1/4 of our country occupies 2/3 of places in elite institutions. The trouble is not that they occupy those places. The trouble is that they complain bitterly about being denied opportunity, about doors being closed for them. This is what I find so amazing, weird, funny, laughable. We don't learn to laugh about things that we need to laugh about. But is it that the difference of caste that we see is probably simply rich and poor? SC, ST, OBC look less educated because they are poor. No, that's not the case. Here we have picked up only poor. The first slide is about Brahmins and other communities which had traditional access to education. Second slide is about OBC upper, Muslims, lower SC, Hindu. These are the bars. So the first set of bars is only poor males. And as you can see, the red, Brahmins and those communities which were given access to education 200 years ago, they stand out. And this is only poor, there is no class difference here. Among poor female goes down further. Is it a question of yesteryears? No sir, this applies very much today as well, and about poor female as well. So what we are looking at is a very grossly unequal access to quality education, which is multiplied by money, and where the privileged become invisible. What should we do? That's the final set of points that I want to make. If this is the situation, what should we do? Let's design a solution. And the solution would be, you have to identify and track privileges. You cannot be quiet about privileges. You have to ensure economic inequalities are reduced, high quality of schooling, preferential opportunities to women, fair representation in politics, all that has to be done. Reservation alone cannot be a solution for something as complex and as multifaceted as inequality of opportunities in our country. But is there a place for reservation? Yes, caste-based reservation does one thing. Reservation is an instrument that is guaranteed to work. It's a sledgehammer, it works. The trouble is that it is inflexible. Caste is the least fudgeable certificate. This is the one certificate you cannot lie about in this country. It is a good proxy for many other things. And this is something which is lodged inside our modern institutions. We need to erase it, change it. So caste-based reservation is necessary but not sufficient. What do we do about it? We need to fine-tune it. There are many things that need to change in caste-based reservations. Exclusion of creamy layer is already happening. It's a very good thing. There should be intergenerational benefits. If one generation has benefited, the next generation should not be allowed benefits at that level. There is need for subclassification within OBC, within SC, within ST. There are communities which have benefited so much that you need to bifurcate these quotas. There is an exclusion. Some communities are no longer backward. They need to be excluded. They need to be thrown out from these lists. All that needs to happen. And we need to move towards a multi-dimensional index, and we need an equal opportunity commission in this country. Finally, should reservation continue forever? No. Reservation cannot be a solution in perpetuity. it's not a matter of pride. It is a sign of something wrong, of a pathology. So instead of asking when would reservations end, the question we should be asking is, when would caste inequalities end? When would unequal opportunities end in this country? If we do so, then reservation can be an instrument against caste-based inequalities. Reservation can become a tool for annihilation of caste. Otherwise, unfortunately, it can also become an addictive medicine which you get addicted to. That's what I learned from Kishan Patnaik. And 27th of September happens to be Kishanji's anniversary, death anniversary, and I'm so privileged to be able to speak about this today. Thank you.